Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Brown. I am the Director for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And welcome today to our presentation with Dr. O. As you know, we are acknowledging National Disabilities Month. And in recognition of National Disabilities Month, we are talking about disabusing disability. And the presentation will be on demonstrating that disability doesn't mean inability. But before we get started, I just have a few announcements that I want you to keep in mind. Before we get started, our office is located in the main building, Office 209. So if you're ever here, feel free to stop by if you have any questions for us. We have some diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and events that are coming up, and we would love for you to be a part of that. A couple of events that we're looking at is we have a book discussion, Strong Inside, that will be on February 3rd. It is with our author, Mr. Andrew Maneris, discussing his book. He will be here to do a book signing on Strong Inside. He is the New York Times bestseller author, and he will be here at SC4 Fine Arts Theater February 3rd from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And he is going to be going over the bibliography of our one of the Black Trailblazer athletes. And so you can obtain a free copy of this book here within our office. If you are interested, feel free to email us at dei@sc4.edu. Also, we have a wonderful Strive mentorship program that we're launching in the winter semester. It offers a 13-week workforce development. So if you have any students that would be interested in participating in this mentorship, they will have an SC4 mentor along with a career mentor as an option, and they can go through the career mentoring by taking some workshops and really having an academic and career guidance program. If you are interested, please email us and refer students that would be eligible. Also, we are celebrating upcoming Dr. Martin Luther King celebration. That is a tradition that we hold near and dear to us. We are hoping that we will be in person on January 17th. It will be here in the Fine Arts Theater, and that will be from 6 to 7:30. So please visit our webpage. We have all of our events. Stay updated. And so today, we won't waste any more time by introducing our very own Dr. O. And Dr. O comes to us as an assistant professor of family medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation, and urology of Michigan Medicine, an adjunct assistant professor of orthopedic surgery. And he is the director of student accessibility and accommodation services at the University of Michigan, where he oversees the Office of Services for Students with Disabilities, 2 testing accommodation centers, and the Adaptive Sports and Fitness Program. He also serves as the spokesperson for Guardian Life in their Equal and Able partnership. Dr. O was born in Nigeria. Before immigrating to the U.S. at a young age, he attended high school at Deerfield Academy and college at Stanford University, where he also ran track and field, and serving as captain his last 2 seasons and achieving academic All-American recognition. He then earned his MD from the University of Michigan before matching into orthopedic surgery at Yale. At the beginning of his 3rd year, he experienced a spinal cord injury, paralyzing him from the chest down. After 2 surgeries and intense rehabilitation, he was blessed with some return of motor function and navigates the world as a proud wheelchair user, managing other long-term incomplete cervical spinal cord injury. Please welcome Dr. O.
Good morning again. Thank you, Jessica, for the introduction. I always tell people that it's worrisome when you have applause before you said anything, because if you then don't like what I say, then you can't clap at the end. So I tell people, please refrain from any sort of applause until the very end. So, I tell people that I always give a brief description of myself as well. So she told you that I'm Dr. O. I'm a young black man sitting here in front of you in a blue blazer, a white collared shirt, a wooden bow tie, I've got brown skin, short black hair, light-rimmed glasses. And I say this because one of the things that I've learned over the past few years is as we strive to make things more accessible and inclusive, individuals who are blind or low vision that then cannot see who is speaking miss a significant part of that presentation when they don't know who they're looking at. And so that's something that is just one small thing that we can do when we introduce ourselves, because it's something that you may not realize, and I say that I didn't know this until very recently myself, and we're all in a constant state of learning, but I recognize the fact that during Zoom, it was really important for some people, but this is something that exists even outside of Zoom meetings. And that aspect of sort of who is speaking, what they look like, and sort of what they bring is an aspect of participating in an event that then you do not get if you have a visual difficulty. And so something really simple that I add for people. Now, the other thing I start off by saying to people is that I don't like giving talks. Now, anyone that knows me, and I don't know if any of you have seen me before, but people say that's a bold-faced lie because you love talking. And I said, you know what, I didn't say I don't like talking. I said I don't like giving talks. What I like to do is start conversations. So what I hope that today will really be a conversation. Because I am not the first or the best or the only, and I know that each and every one of you, whether you have acknowledged this or not before coming in here, you have your own perspective and opinions and experiences related to this topic. And if I'm the only voice that you hear, then I'll be doing a disservice to all of you out there. Because I come here to SC4, as I see you are affectionately referenced, and I know that these conversations will hopefully continue after I leave. And so therefore, I can come in, I can give a talk, and sometimes you might inspire people, you might frustrate people, you might challenge people, but then I go away, and truly what impact has that had on this community unless this community continues to engage in that? And if I come with a scripted presentation or talk, and I think I know what your community needs, I haven't actually impacted this community. Right? Certainly some of these things are ubiquitous, and I can give the same sort of theme discussions no matter where I go. But to truly be able to then understand what this community needs and what this community can do, I need to actually hear from the community. And that's what happens too often, is that people do not listen to the people that they're attempting to then help. And they come in with this sort of, knight in shining armor, I'm going to come save you, but I don't actually know what it is that you want or need. And so while I know the invitation, I know what we said we would discuss, I always leave it open. And so I have slides, but I tell people that my slides are merely a suggestion. And if we get stuck on the first slide and don't even make it anywhere past that slide, that to me is a successful discussion, because it means that there was enough in that first slide that allowed you all to feel like you could come up with different things you wanted to discuss. So to sort of give you an overview, however, what I usually do is I have slides that stimulate conversation. I talk about my own sort of life and my journey because it's just my own story. It's not the best story. It's not the only story. It's not something that should then say, when I heard Dr. O speak, that means I'm going to treat people like this. No, because I tell people that when you've met one person with a disability, you've met one person with a disability. And similarly, when you meet one black person, you've met one black person. When you meet one woman, you've met one woman. It doesn't mean that you take that and then you treat every single woman the way that the woman that presented to you said that she wants to be treated. You don't see every single black person and expect their lived experience is the same as my lived experience because I'm a black person. But it does give you the perspective of someone else and the intersectional identities that they might identify with. So that's why, as I said, I really love to hear the thoughts, opinions, and perspectives of others, because that then allows me to add to my own repertoire when I then give stories and talks about the way that this conversation can go. And so then at the end, I like to try to leave people with sort of tangible action items, because as I said, I think too often people come and wax eloquent about something, and then you might leave and feel like that was great, but you have no idea what you can actually do. You have no idea what you're supposed to take from that. And then sometimes it leaves you with more questions than you actually have answers. So the goal will be to talk a little bit about sort of the framework of what I like to discuss, to then give some specific things that we are doing at the University of Michigan, and then to hopefully feel as though you all have some ideas for things that you can do to disabuse disability. So disabusing disability is the registered trademark I use to try to demonstrate that disability is not inability. Now, as you've heard, I went the majority of my life living, as I now say it, on one side of the stethoscope. And then it was in my third year of orthopedic surgery residency that I experienced this injury that then showed me life on the other side of the stethoscope. And so I have the lived experience that then gives me the perspective I have. And I know that were it not for that experience, I don't think that I would see things the way I see them now. So the other sort of ground rule that I say is that there are no right answers. There are no stupid questions, because as I said, we're always in this constant state of learning. I am still learning. I hope to learn from you today, hopefully more than you even learned from me, because there are many more people out there that I can learn from than the one person sitting here. So as much as I'm the one with the microphone and I'm here at the table, I do not want this to be a unidirectional thing, because I'm really, really hoping to engage in this conversation, because that's what I think is needed. And then the other part of this is that while I will talk about disability, while the title has disability, I really use disability as just a framework to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in general. Because those same concepts with how to then recognize how our world was not built with disability in mind. And when we then see the inaccessibility of the world with respect to disability, we then see how we are sort of marginalizing and sort of putting other people at a disadvantage based on whatever specific demographic we're looking at. So I think that that disability thread, as I said, could be ubiquitous, but hopefully then you'll be able to pull other things from that to say, you know what, I can probably use this framework with respect to X, Y, or Z. So that's my goal today, but then to be in keeping with what I said I like to do, I always then start by asking people as well. You all here in person, and then some people in the Zoomverse somewhere, you came to this for a reason. I don't always know why people come. Sometimes I find out that, oh, this is mandatory and I get my academic credit for being here, and so the only reason I'm here is to check off my box, which is fine, because it's important for me to know that, right? Because if I think that everyone that's in the room is there because they wanted to hear what I had to say, and then no one is saying anything, but I find out that they're there because it was mandatory, that helps. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't still try to engage people, but it gives me a bit more context as to why people may not be engaged from the beginning. And that's okay, right? If you came because the person sitting next to you told you that, hey, I want to go to this event and I was supposed to have a meeting with you, and so we're going to this event instead of the meeting, that's also something important to know, right? Or if somehow you heard about me or you saw the flyer and you thought that looks interesting, I don't know why everyone is here. And as I said, there's no wrong answer. So I'll just start with whoever is willing to speak up. Who wants to share why they ended up coming today? Yes, sir.
I'm very interested in learning your story and gaining new perspectives that will help all of our students.
So this gentleman said that he's very interested in learning my story and gaining some new perspectives to see how this can impact their students. I repeat because I don't know how well the acoustics are in here and the folks on Zoom. So I'll ask, you said our students. So what is your role here at SC4?
I'm the Vice President of Student Services.
Vice President of Student Services. Wonderful. Pleasure to meet you. My role at Michigan is within the Division of Student Life, as we call it. And so your counterpart is Dr. Martino Harmon at Michigan. So I will tell Dr. Harmon that I got a chance to see you. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share why they are here? Yes, ma'am.
I'm actually a student here at SC4. I do actually have a couple of invisible disabilities. So I'm very interested to see what your take is, especially since yours are specifically visible and how you interact with the world.
So this individual is a student here at SC4 who disclosed that she has invisible disabilities. And given that my disabilities are visible, she's interested in hearing sort of my perspective and how I plan to then incorporate that. So thank you very much. And how about one more? Or as many people as want to, but go for it.
I'm an instructor at SC4. I teach the developmental ed classes, so I encounter a lot of students with different abilities. And I had a raw experience this semester where I was focused on how do I have to make a change. So hopefully one of my students is here, but I can't tell. And if he was here, then I have to be here to figure out what he's going to write about for his extra credit assignment.
All right, so she's an instructor. She teaches students here, had a raw experience, and is hoping that maybe some of her students are here as well. And she realized she got to a point where she identified that maybe there was something that she needed to change. And so hopefully maybe there'll be something in this that might support that. On one side, it says the word equality. On the other side, it says the word equity. In the equality side, each of the individuals, I call them tall, middle, and short, They're each standing on one box attempting to watch a game on the other side of a fence. It looks like a baseball game. When each of them has one box, the tallest person can see the game, medium person can still see the game, shortest person cannot see the game. That's the one that says equality. On the side that says equity, the boxes have been shifted some, now that the tallest individual is not standing on any box and can still see the game. Medium is still on their one box and they can see the game. And then short individual is now on two boxes and they can now see over the fence to the game. And once again, that's the side that says equity. So whether you've seen this slide before or not, when you see this, what does it make you think? Perhaps first, maybe someone who has seen the slide. Has anyone seen this before? So, sir, right here, when you saw it, what was the context in which you saw this slide?
It was just posted on Facebook.
It was posted on Facebook. And so I'm going to touch on that. Did people have comments under the Facebook post?
Well, I just looked at the post and saw that it made sense. I didn't really notice that they had comments.
No worries. So he said he saw it on Facebook, saw the post, and saw it made sense, didn't really go to the comments. Has anyone else seen it before? So yes, right here.
Yeah, I saw it in ethics of healthcare class.
Ethics of healthcare class. And then was it discussed afterwards?
Yeah, it was like in the intro of the class, the beginning of the semester, and we were talking about, like different patients, what they have. Everybody doesn't have the same opportunities, so we did go into it a little bit.
So they said that they saw it in ethics and healthcare class, talked about different patients, how patients might have different needs. They didn't go into it a lot more than that, but that sort of was the intro to the class and how they use it. And I think I saw one more here.
I was at a training for our TRIO program, and it was a diversity session that I was attending.
Yep, so diversity. So someone was in a training for one of the sessions that they're in, and it was a part of the diversity conversation. So I don't know if I missed anyone over here. Anyone over here has seen it before? So, yeah, please.
Yeah, I've seen it multiple times. I think initially it was with our Achieving the Dream work, talking about students not always having the same foundation.
All right. So I'll tell you that most people that see this, they saw it in a context of something that they then thought was positive, right? It was trying to talk about positive things. Now, I'm glad that this gentleman brought up Facebook because I often use this slide, and I tell you that I learn something every time I speak, and people have different takes on this slide. And so many people will share openly about what they think, but one time after my presentation was posted online, the comment that someone put afterwards was, "Why don't those insert racial slur here buy tickets like everyone else and watch the game from the inside?" Once again, and I do this for dramatic effect, it said, "Why don't those insert racial slur here buy tickets like everyone else and watch the game from the inside?" Now, I don't do this to be jarring, but I do it because we need to recognize that when we engage in conversation with people, we can be looking at the same picture and have very different interpretations of what's happening. Now, this is not a negative thing. This is actually to say that if you are going to then try to have a conversation with people where you're thinking that you're having the same discussion, you may not see things the same way at all, and so the end goal is not going to be the same for both of you. When one person thinks that this is an image about someone stealing something that doesn't belong to them, and the other people are having these kumbaya conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, providing patients with everything that they need, right? And you come to it from very different angles, and I'm not assigning any sort of qualitative assessment of what was better than the other yet. I'm merely saying that if you do not realize that there are people that don't see things the same way you're seeing them, trying to have a conversation before setting that groundwork is going to be impossible. And so this is how I open up, because as you saw how I started, I wanted to ask some of you what you thought you were going to get from this and why you were here. I shared with you what my intentions were of what I was going to do. And so at the very least, I can at least know that right now we have a shared understanding of what the next hour or so will be. But if we don't do that with people, we then get down the road when we're making decisions and we are still having disagreements, and we don't realize it's because we never agreed to what the conversation was supposed to be in the first place. We never actually agreed to what the problem was. We never identified the problem. Here we are trying to find solutions, and we don't see the problem as the same. Now, it's much easier to talk about these things in cartoons and in slides like this, especially when the reality of our life is really like this. So now we've added a third pane to the slide, and this third one has the same people, except in this one, reality is the slide on the far side. And in reality, the tallest individual is standing on many, many, many boxes. That medium individual is still standing on their one box and can see over the fence. And the shortest individual is now standing in a box-sized hole. And as I said, that one says reality. Now, when we show this one, this is when I start getting a little deeper into what this means, because in the first slide, when we go to places, and very, very often it's in these DEI conversations that people use this. And in the first slide, I say, you know what, if we look at the boxes, if I was talking to a group of people about DEI, one of the things that always comes up is how much it costs to do things, how much it's going to cost to do programming. So when I talk about these boxes as the resources that we have. So in the first slide, how many resources did it take to then have an inequitable experience? 3 boxes, right? In the slide where everybody can now see over the fence, how many resources did it take to make that happen? The same 3 boxes. But we redistributed the resources to make it such that people, the patients, whoever it is, people may need different things, right? So then equity is not giving everyone the same thing, which is what equality may seem to be. Equity is providing people with what they need in order to be successful. Provide them with what they need in order to have access. And now I say those two are different things, because providing access doesn't always guarantee success. And when it comes to then disability, as we'll talk about as we get further into it, the truth is that it's our responsibility, and it's in fact a law, that we provide equitable access to experiences for the disabled community. That does not guarantee that they're going to be successful. And I tell people that, especially in the work that we do, and I'll say it to our Vice President of Student Services, that students with, and instructor too, students with disabilities should have every opportunity to fail as their classmates without disabilities. Students with disabilities might not study hard enough. They might not do their homework. They might not come prepared. They might not work hard, and they might fail the class. And you did not discriminate against a student with a disability because they failed a class, as long as you provided them with the access they needed. Now, if a student with a disability is struggling in a class because they do not have the reasonable accommodations that they should have, and you don't recognize the fact that the reason they're struggling is because they don't have the requisite box that they need to be successful, then that is on you as the instructor, as the administrator, to make sure, are we providing equitable access for these students? Because the reality is, it's not usually one box that we shift. The reality is that this is what it actually looks like, and there are the haves and have-nots, and the amount of resources being put into those that may not need it, and then the individuals that need it are sometimes standing in a hole. How do we even then work to then even just get us to level ground? Now, the thing about it is that when you then talk about resources, people say, well, why did the person that was tallest have to give their box to the short person? Because people then think that this resource is mine, right? I worked for this resource. Why should I have to give my resource up to someone else? And the truth is, that's an honest question sometimes. Because if it is something that that person worked for, how do we then provide sufficient resources for everyone? The question is then, is it the individual's resource? Is it the institution's resource? How do we determine our priorities such that that person felt obligated for that thing and this other person did not have that? And the next thing that comes up is people say, you know what, I don't know what that person did to dig themselves into that hole. You're saying that now it's my responsibility to give up the box that I worked for to then fill a hole for someone else that dug that for themselves. Now, we don't know what anybody did to put themselves in the situation that they're in, and many times they did not do anything. And this is where we start talking about some of the systemic injustices that exist. And for this conversation, I'll focus on racism and ableism, is that those things are not the fault of the individual. The fact that I'm a black man, first of all, I don't even like to use the word fault, because that then means that being a black man is negative. And while I do not feel that, I know that there are many people that do. But being a black man is not a negative thing, but it is not my fault or my doing that I was born a black man. And now if anyone says that even today there's no difference in color, then I would love for people to chime in because that'll be a really exciting conversation. Because I hope that whether you agree with whether it's a positive difference or a negative difference, which once again I didn't say, if you feel as though people will have the same experience regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, then this is going to be a very great discussion because I, at least in my N of 1 experience, can say that that is not the case. And so that, if it is a positive or a negative thing that you associate with whatever that difference is, it is not one person's fault that they are in the hole, just as much as it may not be the credit to you that you have that box. That box of privilege that you have may not be something that you did anything to earn. It might have been because your parents did something to provide it for you. It might have been because of the neighborhood you were born into. It might have been because of the family that you have. Some of the resources that you already have, it's not that you didn't deserve them, but we have to think and realize that you may not have actually done anything to earn it any more than the person who's in a box did anything, in a hole, did anything to deserve it. And so that's what makes these conversations really interesting, especially in institutions, because everybody comes into this conversation with certain privileges and certain prejudices. And I think that we draw a line and make it seem like you're either one or the other. And I talk about the intersectionality of my identities as a young, disabled, Nigerian, Christian, immigrant, black male physician, father. And I know that many of these things have provided me with privileges in my life that others haven't had. I went to Deerfield, Stanford, Michigan, Yale, and Notre Dame, and I know that the educational background I have has opened many doors for me that have been closed for other people. That when I was a black man, since I've been a black man, and I tell people that I've been a black man my entire life, believe it or not, yet it wasn't until the past 8 years of living life on both sides of the stethoscope that I have felt as discriminated against and marginalized as I have been. And I have felt discriminated against as a black man. But the difference is that I felt as though with my pedigree and privilege, I was able to overcome some of that. Some of that. Despite people trying to hold me down, there's only so much you can do with the letters after my name and then the places that I have been. But even in those spaces, I have felt people trying to hold me back. But it wasn't until having a disability that I have been literally and figuratively kept out of buildings. I've literally not had a seat at the table for things that I thought I had actually worked to then get to. And so people are probably wondering, man, this is what, 30 minutes into this conversation, he's not said really anything about disability. And so this is the slide that then I use to kind of bring this home for then the conversation that I hope to have with people. Because in the first couple slides that we showed, I'll bring up a couple other items that we usually touch on, is that the slide had people of color, right? There are other iterations of this slide that the people are not people of color. And so that changes the tenor of the conversation when they're not people of color when you're having that conversation. The other thing that comes up is that people assume when they look at that those three people were all male. It looked like a father and his two sons, and people say, well, some people looked at that first slide and said, I don't actually see anything wrong with this because this is just the lifespan. The youngest brother should not have the same access to certain things as his older brother and his father do. And so if we talk about it this way, I actually think that we need to be careful. It was at a Harvard OBGYN and Pediatrics joint grand rounds where that one came up, because the people in the audience took care of people in various parts of the lifespan. And they said, well, when I look at this, I don't think that the adult population should then have the same exact experience as the children. And I think that there's certain things that should not be for children, and therefore I'm not going to reallocate resources to let the child have access to it. And so this image is wonderful because this one, I think, brings a lot of things together in the DE&I conversations that we have, where, and honestly, I don't know, these are all different people that made these images, and so it's just random websites I found it as well, and so I can't give any specific person credit for all of them, because the way that I put it together is not the way that it was like found online. I've kind of like brought different images in, and so I can't say that people meant this when they did it, but this is how I put it together. So on this one, you can see different skin tones. Right? So at least that's going to then address the fact that people will have different experiences based on that. And then we still have people of varying heights, as you can see. And then they've changed the hairstyle and the clothing, once again, not saying that there is a binary of gender, male, female, but to say at least this one is trying to demonstrate perhaps different genders as well to have that conversation. And this one now has an individual with a visible disability to then talk about the fact that for me, I tell people, no matter how many boxes you give me, I'm not gonna be able to hop up on that box to watch the game. But if you use that wood to build a ramp, and that's what's gonna give me access, then that is the way that you provide access for people. Now, depending on how sort of persnickety people get, they'll look at that and they'll say, well, Dr. Okanlami, the box for that, the wood needed for that small box is a little bit less than the wood for that ramp. And so the resources are actually more for that. And I say, come on, I didn't make this slide. It's just an analogy, like go with me, right? But if I'm feeling particularly spicy, I'll say, you know what, you're right. It does take more wood to make that ramp, but is that going to be the reason why you don't build it? Are you then going to go back and say, because I need more wood for the ramp than I did for the box, I'm only going to give that person enough wood for the box, even if the ramp then doesn't give them access? And so I flip it right back to people and say, well, let's actually have that conversation then. Let's say that it does take more wood. Is that your reason for why you're not going to provide access? And tell me what the person did to not deserve enough wood for the box, or so for the ramp. Because the person that you built the box for, did they do something different to deserve this access? You admitted them to your institution. They are here now. Now what they need to then have access is a ramp versus a box. And so what that gets to is that there was a time, it was about maybe 2 years ago now, that I was having the sort of the pre-discussion before a talk like this at a school that won't be named. And the administrators, all the senior leadership were at this pre-meeting. And it was really telling because, I'll tell you the punchline, but at the end of the conversation, we then had the actual presentation, and I think out of the 9 or 10 people that were at the pre-meeting, only one came to the talk. And that's because this is the conversation that ended up ensuing. It was clear to me, because they're asking me questions about providing accommodations for students. This was a health sciences university. And they said, well, what is it that what do you say that we should do when for the next level of their training, they're not going to get these accommodations? And so aren't we setting them up for failure by providing them with accommodations now, when we know that in law school, dental school, pharmacy school, whatever, when they're taking their qualifying exams, that they're not going to get those accommodations? And I said, you provide them with their accommodations. They said, oh, I know, I get that, but aren't we setting them up for failure, because then they're not going to get them later on, and shouldn't we sort of start to prepare them for what the real world is now, and not give them these accommodations, because we really want to, and I want you to make it clear, we want to give them, Dr. O, but I think it's just make it harder for them. Next step. So what should we do? And I said, you should give them their accommodations. And they said, well, I struggle, and I said, you know what, actually, it hit me. I know what you should do. I've got it. Like, oh, okay, great. Took out the pen and pad. I said, you should not admit students with disabilities to your institution since you're clearly not prepared to support them. And then there was silence. And I said, I'm being serious here, because you clearly invited me with an agenda. You've asked me the same question twice, and I've told you that you should provide the accommodations. When you talk about the real world is not perfect. And we need to tell students that, but that doesn't mean you don't give them what they need now, because they might not get it later. Because if they're not able to have access and be successful now, there will be no later for them. And so how about you provide the accommodations now that are needed, and then advocate with your students to then get them the accommodations they need later as well. And I will guarantee you that if you give them what they need to be successful now, and they don't get the accommodations later, they're not going to be blaming you. They're actually going to thank you for providing them with what they needed, which allowed them to then advocate for themselves at that next stage. And so that's what often happens in these conversations when we talk about those resources, because people do want an out to say that then, you know what, it is too much money to build the ramp. And because of this reason, and because of our institutional priorities, we have to then focus on this and this and this, and we really want to do it, but it's just not in the budget for fiscal year 2020, blah, blah, whatever it is, because it's never been in the budget for any of these fiscal years, even though we're now 31 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it is mandated by law that we then have at least the floor. There should be no one in the hole anymore, yet that's not the case. And so this is the way that we engage in these conversations, to start to say, you know what, people may need different things. Patients may need different things. Students may need different things. We may need to then shift as instructors in how we do things at times. We may need to change the structure of our student services to reflect the fact that one of my phrases is the past may not be your fault. And I say may not be because I have no idea. You might have been here for 30 years and everything that happened here at SC4 is your fault. Maybe, I don't know. But the past may not be your fault, but the future will be. So I tell people that what is it that you're going to do once you identify that there are people in a hole? Are you going to then provide the access to then fill that hole? Are you going to give the resources to make sure that at the very least people are standing on level ground? Are you going to acknowledge the fact that people have different needs and therefore we need to provide a different resource? I use visible disabilities as the gateway into this because that is something people can at least understand. People can understand when you see this and you see that I need to then use this wood to make a ramp instead of a box, and that's the access. But for invisible, non-apparent disabilities, what that access looks like is different. Some of the simple things that people talk about, so like I said in the intro, you heard that I run our services for students with disabilities, our testing accommodation centers, and our adaptive sports and fitness program. And so the testing portion of that is where we then have other conversations. Because some of the things that are sort of the commonplace accommodations in the testing environment are limited distraction environments, extended time on exams. And I tell people that I actually do not like calling it extended time. Because that to me perpetuates this notion that someone is getting something extra. That is not extended time, it is the amount of time that that individual needs to be able to have the same access as their peers. And so I give another sort of visual analogy. So I was an academic All-American track athlete, almost went to the Olympics, and so my physical abilities to do things most of my life were one of the ways that I was judged, right? And so I tell people, okay, right now I'm a proud wheelchair user, as I said. I can move around without my wheelchair, but I cannot walk without something to hold on to. And so I would need something to be able to be upright without something. And so let's say you were giving a test. So here's to go to the testing center analogy. The test is that I have to then go the length of the football field, all right? And everyone in the class has that same test. If you do not allow me to then use some sort of mobility device, a walker, crutches, wheelchair, a scooter, a motorcycle, whatever it is, if you don't give me some sort of device, it will take me longer to get there. Now, you weren't testing how fast we could get across the field. You said that the goal is to get from point A to point B across a football field. I will get there without accommodations, but I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be itchy because I'm allergic to grass. If I'm rolling across the field to get there, my clothes will be dirty. It will take me much longer to get there, but I can do it. Now, is that what we should be putting our students through? Because unfortunately what happens is people then look at the success that you had without accommodations. When we then have to justify the reason for accommodations, if you didn't fail, people then say, oh, well, but you were fine. So why do you need this extra time? Why do you need this, whatever, insert the accommodation here? You clearly were able to then be successful. But when we then look at previous success as the justification for not providing access, that is where we fail. Because who knows how much better that person would have been able to be had they actually had the access. I talk about not just getting across a field, but I sometimes talk about getting into buildings because that's another reality, realistic one. If there's no ramp for me to enter a building, once again, since I can walk, I could still get in, right? But if there's no one there with me, what it's gonna take is I'm probably gonna then transfer onto the floor of the step and literally pull my chair up with me each step I go, pulling the wheelchair, bumping my butt up, pulling the wheelchair. I will be dirty, I will be cold, I will be tired, I will be wet, but I would have gotten into the building. Is that the experience that we want anyone to have in our institution? Now, we don't always see what that journey is. If someone is neurodivergent, if someone has ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, depression, you may not be able to quantify what that barrier is for them and how difficult it is. But guess what? That's because it's not actually your job. It's your job to educate that student, to provide them with the access. There are professionals that then do the assessment to determine that this individual has a disability-related barrier, And here is how you can then mitigate that by then providing them with access. You shouldn't then be questioning why that person needs that access, because it is not your responsibility as the instructor to have the student disclose what the disability is. I don't know if you have an office at SC4 that then does this, but that office is the group of professionals that then makes that determination. There's an exploration to then determine what the disability-related barrier is. We have a process of getting the requisite documentation to understand, because at the same time, as an individual with a disability, I am actually a stickler on that part, because I know that some people see accommodations as an extra. They see it as a bonus, they see it as an unfair advantage. And so therefore, I do not ever want anything to be given to us, because this is not something that is being given to us as a courtesy or as a favor. It is the fact that since the systemic structures were put in place that made it such that you do not have access, we need to then put in the access for people. To go back to use racism as the example, not to be jarring once again, but we go back to history to show that there are times in this country where I was not seen as 100% human. You were allowed to own me. You were allowed to sell me. You were allowed to hang me. That was the country that we were living in. And so to get to where we are now, to recognize that there are systemic injustices that have occurred, disabled people did not have the same rights. Women couldn't even vote. We couldn't go to the same school as most of the people in this room. That was our law. And we've come a long way, but it doesn't mean that we're where we should be. And so that's why I tell people that if you don't understand the circumstance, that's okay, but don't be the barrier. Don't be the reason that we're not going to be able to get the access we need. And to then pull on this continued analogy, I didn't reference that one of the times I showed this, there was a softball player in the audience that said, you know, like that fence is there for a reason. Oh, because there's a major part that I skipped. Oftentimes people have another slide that then says justice, and there's no fence. People say you should take down the fence shouldn't even be there, that's the problem. We're not gonna take it, right? But then the softball player said, no, that fence is there because we need the fence. The sport that we play, we don't know what a home run is if we don't have the fence. If there's a busy field, busy road on the other side of that field and the ball rolls out, every time we cross that road, we're putting ourselves in danger to then have to get the ball. But the thing is, we want people to watch our game. So we didn't know that there were people that were left on the other side of the fence not being able to see. And so if, once again, you have the conversation with people on both sides of the fence, you can then figure out what that mutual sort of solution should be. If you want people to be able to see the game, and the people want to watch the game, then whether you put up a plexiglass fence, chain link fence, whatever it needs to be such that you can then get what the people on the inside need and what the people on the outside need and want as well. And then you can have a good conversation, right? But for the person that still looks at this and says, why don't they buy tickets like everybody else and watch the game from the inside, that solution would not be the right solution for them. And you may not know why they're so adamantly pushing against not having this chain link fence or plexiglass fence. You're thinking, what's the big deal? But it's because they think that this is someone stealing something that they shouldn't get. That's the same thing that unfortunately does exist in some of our instructors, because they think that we are compromising the academic integrity of the work being done. We're lowering the bar for academic excellence when we provide accommodations. So they don't want us to figure out how we can then either remove the fence or put the clear fence or give the box or give the ramp, because they are firmly rooted in the fact that this student should not be here. Why are we setting this student up for failure when giving them this is going to be an unfair advantage and it's going to actually disadvantage them? Wouldn't it be better for us to then encourage them to find a different course of study? Why don't you then try this other thing, which is a little bit easier? You know, I'm really doing this for your best interest. Like, it's going to be really hard for you to get through that. Now, the truth is that that statement actually isn't false, and it's false. It's not false because it is difficult for them to get through because we're not giving the access that people need. And so if we can get to that point of seeing that we need to provide the access, We need to utilize the individuals that we have in our institutions that have the knowledge to then say, this is a disability-related barrier, that is not the fault of the individual, and therefore, if we truly want diverse and an equitable and inclusive community, we need to recognize that people have different needs, and we're going to accommodate those needs by determining what the resources are that we need to do to make it happen. So hopefully you can see some of these connect the dots that happen here, because when you have these conversations in this way, it makes it really, really difficult to justify why you're not going to do it, other than saying, we don't want to. Because what I tell people is, if you want to know an institution's priorities, where do you think you should look? Who? What was that? Their budget. And I want to hear that other answer. There are a couple other answers. I mean, I said I want to learn. You look at the institution, look at what the institution is doing. Someone else said something else. Like I said, I like to learn because that's the answer that I was going with, but someone might say something else, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that one next time. So did someone say something other than the institution or the budget? Okay, so the budget is what I say. Because I tell people, look, I have strategic plans. I have things I have to put forth. I know that there are going to be priorities and we cannot do all 10 things at the same time. But that's when I say to them, okay, well then where is this on our list of priorities? If you say that we need to build the new blah, blah, blah complex, and that's the first thing on our capital campaign, and then we need to then make sure that we're making sure that we have pay equity because we realized last year in our DEI strategic plan that we finally acknowledged that women are not getting paid the same as men, so the next year we're going to then make sure that all assistant professors, whether male or female, are getting the same salary at entry, all that stuff. Okay, I like it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Accessibility, where's that one? If you say that you care about this, where is your plan for making this an accessible institution? Where's your plan for being able to provide the resources for the accommodations? Where's your plan for doing this? Because when it's not in your budget at any point, miss me with all this nonsense of how we just haven't gotten there yet. You haven't planned to do it because you have not identified this as a need. So please go back to your strategic plan, identify which boxes you can move around to then put enough resources so that the students that you bring in here can see that you actually are committed to doing that. And I told you guys, you're gonna need to raise your hands and talk because I never said I don't like talking. So I wanna have a conversation, but I'll keep on going. I'll tell you because it gets me all fired up, and I haven't had the chance to do it as in person as much anymore because of all this COVID. And so it's really great because like you can see people nodding and you know who's paying attention. Like you can tell when people have their laptops open and aren't paying attention. And this is pretty cool because no one has their laptops open. I don't know if, I can't really see everything because of light, so your eyes might be closed. I don't really know. But at least I see some heads that are nodding. At least they're either bobbing their head and sleeping, or they're actually like acknowledging that they're paying attention. But either way, I'm having fun, so whether you are or not, it's fine. So this is like the exciting part for me, right? And I haven't said a whole bunch about my life because I don't want people to then make this about me. Because it isn't about me, truly, right? As I said, I am super duper privileged to be in the position I'm in, and it has very little to do with how hard I have worked. I had 2 physician parents who then pushed education on me. I was able to get an education in many, many different places that have put me in this position now. My injury was something that I don't even make as sort of a pivotal point in my life because that was just another piece of what happened in my life. And so yes, it has changed the perspective that I have, but every experience we have changes the perspectives that we have. I think it is because other people think that my injury should mean so much more to me than it does, that then it's an interesting piece for others, right? Because every single one of us has some sort of journey. But this particular part of my life shouldn't be so interesting. But the reason it's interesting is because people know it's going to be more difficult because our world isn't accessible. That's what makes it interesting. People talk all the time about how much resilience I have, and I tell people I'm tired of being so resilient. Because guess what? The only reason I'm resilient is because of all the barriers that have been put in front of me. And so what you also do is that you then take this person in the majority group that hasn't had as many struggles, and you're actually diminishing the work that they put into their own lives. Because if you weren't born into a family that then had a bunch of struggles, your successes are not seen as impressive. And so if we look at that, right, because the other thing we do in these conversations is we ostracize majority groups to make them feel like it's their fault. But I say it's not your fault that you were born into the world you were born into. Once again, you shouldn't, people talk about white fragility and white guilt. I'm not trying to make any of y'all guilty. I'm not. So I don't want that. I want all of us to then have this conversation, because the color of your skin is not your fault any more than the color of my skin is mine. But we have to acknowledge that we do have different lives and different experiences because of that. I mean, I'm a 6'1", 235-pound black man, and I'll tell you, the number of people that then now want to help me when they see me has skyrocketed. Prior to being a wheelchair user, most people weren't walking over to me on the other side of the street asking if they could help me with something. They were walking to the other side of the street to get away, thinking I was trying to get something from them. And I'm so serious. I've experienced that throughout my life. And I'm like a super happy, friendly person. And so when I see it, and I'm like, no, that didn't happen. Yes, that happened. Yes, that's what happened. You know what I mean? And now the funny thing is that what will happen is people will then think that I'm rolling up on them to ask them for money. You see me like in downtown Ann Arbor wheeling around, and I dress like this most of the time. So there are times that I stop and I think, if I weren't calm, cool, and collected like I sometimes try to be, I would go off on people and be like, what makes you think that me in my nice suit and my wooden bow tie needs any money from you? I was like, I'm about to drive back to my nice car and go to my nice house and drink my nice wine, and you think I'm about to roll up on you and ask you for money? And so I don't like to then pitch it that way, but there are times that it gets frustrating, because what I really want to say is, do you even know who I am? And I say, Google me. No, really, Google me. So it's like, so those are the things that make it frustrating for me, but that just keeps on fueling my passion, because I know that I'm in a position of privilege where I can have those conversations, right? I can then try to move the needle forward. I can try to do whatever I can in what I call our spheres of influence, to then try to get to people to realize that we are all much more similar than we are different. And our differences should not be what pull us apart. Because I learn from people that are different from me. If all of you had the same experience I did and saw things in the same way, you would not be able to teach me things that I haven't experienced or I haven't seen. And so that's what's exciting about DE&I. That's what's exciting about conversations like this, is the perspective that you gain so that you can make somebody's tomorrow better than their yesterday. That's what's exciting for me. It's not about the fact that even though we have a long way to go, that we talk about the negatives of what this world is. Because yes, those negatives are there, but I don't dwell on the negatives. I talk about the reality of where we are and then try to work together with people to figure out how we can get beyond it. And so once again, I'm losing track of time. I know we got to move. So I'm gonna flash through a couple of these things in COVID, talk about my story, talk about my injury, talk about some of the resources that have been given. And I want to go to then this image. So this is an image, as I said, I wanted to talk about some tangible things that can be done. I want to talk about what it is that we're doing. And this right here is an image of the University of Alabama Adapted Athletics. So anybody football fans in the audience? So anybody an Alabama football fan? All right. Awesome. So here's why I use this one. So if you're not a football fan, I'm sorry, but I'm a sports person. I'll make some analogies for you so you understand. Alabama is this powerhouse of a football program that's just kind of like, reload each year, still got Heisman Trophy finalists every single season. I don't know how they keep on getting these I don't know where they get them from so often that their team is ridiculous every year, right? So they do really well. This is Alabama's adaptive sports program. So this facility that you're looking at here is the disabled sports program in Alabama, that then their facilities rival most Division I NCAA able-bodied or non-disabled programs. And so Alabama, exactly. So it frustrates me as a Michigan, Stanford, Notre Dame, Yale guy to see Alabama demonstrating that even they in Alabama somehow are more accessible and inclusive to people with disabilities, that they recognize that we have not been providing equitable opportunities for student athletes with disabilities. Despite the fact that the Olympic and Paralympic Games just happened, and we had more coverage by NBC this year than we've ever had for any Paralympic Games in the past, despite the fact that the United States Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee have now joined forces to be the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee as one thing, despite the fact that Paralympians, when they got their medals this year, were paid the same amount as Olympians, which was not what happened in the past, there are very few collegiate programs that actually support disabled student athletes. Now, what they do is to go back to my sort of examples of me crawling up the stairs, is that if you are so elite and so amazing that you can then compete on the non-disabled team, that is what the NCAA actually then has access for. So there are several people that are sort of like bilateral lower extremity amputees or one-level amputee that have competed on sort of professional, like on track teams. Like Hunter Woodall is one of the biggest names that you can find. He was at Arkansas, and he is a sprinter, bilateral lower extremity amputee. Anyone that knows track, the dude runs like a 44-second 400 with bilateral lower extremity amputations. And so that is what they do. They allow you to participate in the NCAA program if you're just so ridiculously good that you can also compete with able-bodied, non-disabled folk. Not because we recognize that, once again, people have different needs, people have different resources and abilities, and we have an entire world of adaptive sports that we could then provide access to, but we don't actually provide that access because, once again, it looks like lowering the bar. But people don't get that. Look, if we truly are providing equitable opportunities, just like we have varsity, club, intramural, recreational sport, we should have accessible sport for anybody, whatever your disability is, you should have access as well. But what they do is they need you to be that Paralympic medalist for them to understand that this is also sport. Because the Olympics and Paralympics are two different things, but people the Paralympics and the Special Olympics are two different things. People conflate them because what most people have heard of is like, oh yeah, I've heard of the Special Olympics. That's really, really wonderful. What they're doing for those kids is just so special, isn't it? It warms my heart to see. Now, it is heartwarming for that, and I don't want to take away from that. But when you're going to an NCAA Division I institution and trying to then justify that you want to have facilities like this because there are students and student athletes that are competing on the international stage that should have the same access as your varsity athletes, the Special Olympics is not the example of what I'm trying to pitch to you. And it's not the Special Olympics don't have a place, it's just that this is a different category. But when you lump all people with disabilities together and say that, oh, that's what we're doing, you miss the boat. So what we've been trying to do at Michigan is reconceptualize these equitable opportunities. Because we can see, and what I saw, once again, just from my own experience, I was an All-American athlete in college, went to Michigan, then Yale, and then Notre Dame, and it wasn't until those times that I realized my entire life, even though I took care of patients with disabilities, I was an athlete, I didn't know anything about adaptive sports. And so I didn't realize how I was unintentionally complicit in this system of ableism that then was not providing equitable access for people that I just hadn't seen. And I hadn't seen them not because I was trying to avoid it, but because the experiences that I had, the communities I was in, were not accessible enough that then I was seeing them in my day-to-day journey. And so I want you after this to think about how many people you see in wheelchairs when you get around. And it's not because they're not there, it's because they likely are not coming out to the same places that you're going because of how difficult it is to get around in them or to them. I was just fortunate to go to Turkey for my buddy's wedding a couple weeks ago and just came back from Nigeria for my grandmother's 90th birthday. And I posted a couple things about my travel because traveling with a disability, with at least a physical disability, right, has some of its sort of difficulties. And I addressed some of them, and then I addressed some of the ones that people might not see. Mainly people think about getting on and off the plane, where you're gonna put your wheelchair, if your wheelchair's gonna get broken. On my Turkey trip, my wheelchair was completely destroyed and damaged, so the airline is working on replacing that one. On the trip, this last trip I took, I wear my clear masks. My clear masks are then to be accessible for individuals who use lip reading to then be able to then interact as well, just like I give visual descriptions. These are FDA-approved masks, like this can be used. Delta even has on their website that fabric mask, which like with a clear plastic window, are then permitted, but the flight attendants told me that I could not wear my mask, handed me very rudely, honestly, a cloth mask, and then told me that they weren't gonna take off in the plane until I put this on. And so I tried to then gently educate them about the reason for the accessibility I was providing, and it was really funny, and I'll tell this quick story, is that in the thing that they were talking about, they're like, oh, if you are deaf and hard of hearing, then you can wear this mask. And it was immediately, I started posting this stuff, thank you, you already got the punchline. So I immediately texted and tweeted this as they were saying it, and someone on Facebook responded and said, what, so then I can read my own lips? Like, what's the reason for me to be the only one wearing a clear face mask if I'm the one that's deaf or hard of hearing? I mean, it was ludicrous, the arguments that they were making to just try to avoid something that they just didn't understand. And once again, it's okay to not understand it, but then don't be the barrier. So, to get back to this, What we are trying to do is to demonstrate the fact that because I acknowledged throughout my life that I was being unintentionally complicit to the system of ableism, now one of my goals is making sure that I can do what I am able to do within the things that I'm interested in and passionate about to make sure that the things that I touch are as accessible as possible. And so to go to a place like the University of Michigan, who has a storied history in athletics, and that's why I started talking about football, because yes, we are number 2 this year right now in the college football playoff, and Alabama is not, so that's wonderful. But I will say Alabama does have the most national championships in adaptive sports. Their teams that always win, they've got wheelchair tennis, that's amazing. They've got a wheelchair basketball program, that's amazing. I encourage you to check out Alabama Adapted Athletics on YouTube and watch some of their hype videos. I mean, if you didn't know about adaptive sports before and then you watch this, if you're an athlete, if you're a person that likes sports, you cannot avoid but getting charged up when you see them. And it's also exciting because if you've never seen it before, it's also this novel thing to say, wow, I've been missing this thing for so long. And so that's what we're trying to do all the way from Paralympic level athlete to elementary school. So we've got our adaptive sports and fitness program that is made up of these pillars. So our adaptive sports and fitness program has 4 competitive sports right now. We've got wheelchair basketball, we've got wheelchair tennis, who actually, in our first year of competition last year, we got 2nd place at the Wheelchair Tennis Nationals, 2nd place to, yes, and then we've got ambulatory track and field. One of my student athletes who's a first-year medical student won gold. If you look him up, his name is Sam Grewe, Grewe. Sam Grewe won gold in the high jump in the Paralympics this past year. He'd won multiple other national and international titles, but had never gotten gold at the Paralympics, so this was his gold medal year. And then we've got a partnership with Therapeutic Riding Incorporated for para-equestrian. Then if you look at the top of that, some of the other things that we're doing is that we have the Adaptive Sport and Inclusive Recreation Initiative, where we are embedding adaptive sports curriculum into the PE programs of the Ann Arbor Public Schools. So this year, every single 6th grade student in Ann Arbor, if we ever get back to safe schools, I just wanted to pause for that for a second, given what we all have experienced in this Michigan community in the past week. And I don't know if this county has school today, but my 10-year-old son is not in school right now because of some of the threats of violence that were coming against his school. So this is it's a tangent, but I do think that I wanted to then just acknowledge that in this space as well, because of all the things that we're dealing with and talking about racism and sexism and ableism. No student should then have to be fearing going to school. And so I don't know if anyone has direct relationship to Oxford, but I know that all of us are related to it in some way. So just to acknowledge that in this space as well. But so every 6th grader is going to then get adaptive sports within their PE class. Now this is not adapted PE, this is not special ed, this is the PE that every single student is going to get, because I see adaptive sports not as sports for people with disabilities, but adaptive sports are sports that allow everyone to participate. And so the thing is, if you only have one child in your community who's a wheelchair user, they can't have a program that they can participate in. And so if they get 9 non-disabled friends and then you get 10 sport chairs, you can have 5-on-5 wheelchair basketball for that child. And what I tell people is that, once again, the way that we do classification in adaptive sports, and this is a longer story, but I feel as though there should be no reason why we can teach dodgeball and capture the flag and tetherball, but we can't teach wheelchair basketball, seated volleyball, and goalball, right? So no matter whether you have a disability or not, we are allowing and introducing adaptive sports to all kids. Because imagine if you are the one that is in high school, college, and one day, and you meet a friend with a disability who came from a community that did not have adaptive sports, and this kid doesn't play any sports. You're like, wait a minute, I don't have a disability, and I've been playing wheelchair tennis since I was 6. Come on, man, let me introduce you to it. Comment.
Do they have that in Alabama or anywhere else?
The thing that I'm describing?
Yes.
So at Alabama, once again, I love Alabama. I will tell you, I love Alabama. And they have set the standard for many things. And I've said this directly to them, so I know this is live streamed and it'll be videotaped. This is not a negative thing, and Alabama's heard me say it. I think Alabama's program actually reflects what I didn't coin this phrase, but it's separate but equal. Because despite the fact that Alabama has these amazing facilities for their varsity sports, they then had to build a separate facility for adaptive athletics. While it's exciting and it's great and it's big and it's beautiful, and the athletes there are definitely not going to complain because they have their own things. And if someone wanted to give us $50 million to build our own facility, I'm probably not going to say no, but at the same time, Michigan has the resources. We should not have to build new facilities. We just need to then be inclusive of the entire community in the facilities that exist. And so at Alabama, the buildings that you're looking at are just the adaptive sports buildings, and they do not get to use the other buildings. And so that's the reason why they did it. Now, they've been together for a long time, so they had some access to like the rec sports things, and they were getting in certain places, but the reason that they needed their own was because they weren't getting equitable access, right? I mean, not to bite the hand that feeds me, but one of the things that we're actively trying to go through right now is we're planning a wheelchair basketball tournament for early next year, and we're going to have to pay for the facility space at our own institution to host a tournament such that it's going to be more cost effective for us to fly to someone else's tournament than hosting one of our own. And so the difficulty of these conversations, once again, is the fact that people aren't used to it. And you know, I'll give you another sort of analogy that I use if you want to have to like kind of have these conversations with people. I talk about access to facilities, particularly for adaptive sport, but this could be used in many other settings, like parking. Now, this is a kind of a quiet area, so I don't know if you have parking issues like we have at Michigan, but to park on campus is really difficult to find parking. And so let's talk about maybe parking at the mall or something during the holiday season. Look at that, right? We already don't have enough parking for all the people that want to park. So that's just the truth, you need to know that. Then, each parking lot will have a certain number of accessible parking spots, right? What is happening right now is we are giving people that do not need accessible parking first choice of the parking spots that they get to use. And when you're rushing for a Black Friday sale and you want to be the one to get that first big screen TV, if there's a spot closest to the door, that's the spot you're going to take. And so if that's the accessible spot, but we're giving you permission to then take the whatever spot you want, the accessible spots are filling up before people can then get into them that need them. So even though people are trying to give access, they're saying, oh, we will give you access after we give everybody else access. And then if there's nothing left, that's not our fault. Like, oh, it's really difficult because there's not enough parking for everyone anyway. And so I'm sorry that you didn't get it. Because what I'm trying to say is that no, you should then be giving first access to the individuals that need the accessibility. Because there are only a few spots that we could use in the first place. And so if we then can't even use the accessible spots, but everybody else could have used any of the other spots, this isn't skipping the line to then give this accommodation. This is recognizing that there are only a few spots that are available for this group that needs this, so let them pick first, let them have their spots, and then let the other people in. And so we have last pick of time for scheduling events in our facilities because all the other programs that have been there for a long time have their set times. And so once again, I'm not biting the hand that feeds me because it is going to be difficult and take time to sort of get the relationships to change those things. But when we recognize the fact that, once again, our programs were not built with disability in mind, and so therefore not all of our University of Michigan facilities are even accessible. And they recognize that. So there are only a few of the buildings that we can even host our programming in, but those buildings are booked up with things that they've been doing for years. And so we're trying to then shift this mindset to then recognize the fact that you are going to have to break some of these boxes to then make these ramps. And so until you then make things more accessible in a wide-scale setting, the things that you already have allocated to other people are going to have to be reconceptualized to make sure that everybody's getting the access that they need. And it's a difficult conversation, and it's something that too often makes the person that needs that accessibility sort of persona non grata because they seem like they're just complaining all the time. And that's the difficulty. When you are that minoritized or marginalized voice, every time you speak up and talk about the injustice, people are like, oh, why are you coming back with this again? We're doing our best, like we've come a long way. Rome wasn't built in one day. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? How do you turn a cruise ship? All of the things that people talk about, right? You know what I mean? And I'm saying, well, like, turn the cruise ship, eat the elephant, like, give me the bites that I'm taking one bite at a time, but I don't see the captain turning this boat at all. Every time I ask those questions, you give me these platitudes, but I don't see it in your strategic plan. I don't see you planning for 10 years from now such that you're not having the same conversation then that we're having now. And I started to get even bolder and say, and I'll pitch this to you all as well, quite honestly, because I got bolder and I said, you know what? I expect you to invite me back in 2 years. Because in 2 years, if we can then have this same exact conversation, then this talk meant nothing. And your institution had no desire to actually make a change. And it's not to say that in 2 years when I come back, I expect to see everything different. But in 2 years when I come back, if there isn't something in your strategic plan that addresses accessibility, if this office is not something that then has heard from the main campus about what we're going to do to then provide the accommodations that we need, that means that this didn't sink in. If people don't come back to say, you know what, this is what we've done in our community. This is the thing that I saw I could do in my neighborhood, at my church, at my child's school. Because hopefully now when you see inaccessibility, you will then recognize that we need to change something about it. You know, I didn't spend enough time talking about invisible disabilities, but it's because when I talk about that, that's more abstract for people. And I think sometimes when you talk about the physical, they at least start to recognize how inaccessible the world is. And then I say, imagine that this is what you can see. Imagine the inaccessibility that you can't. And when we're not even doing anything to address the barriers that we can see, imagine the person's experience that has barriers that you cannot see. What's going to happen is it's the reverse of Field of Dreams. You know, if you build it, they will come. If you haven't built it, they're staying away. And so people are not going to come to your institution if they can see that you are not even providing this basic level accessibility, because then their needs are even more nuanced. And they should not be forced to disclose whatever it is. They should just be able to come into a space that clearly recognizes the diversity of the community, knows that there are going to be individuals with disabilities, thinks ahead, and then makes a plan for then how to accommodate. And the other thing that you can do, even if you don't make a plan ahead of time, and this is something that people often ask in these sessions, they say, you know, Dr. O, you've said a lot of things, but you know, I need to understand, so how do I then accommodate my student with a disability? Like, what do you suggest I do? What do you think the answer is to that question of how you should accommodate that student with a disability?
Universal design of the course.
That's a wonderful thing, universal design. What else? If you want to know how to accommodate Jimmy John, how should you do that? Talk to Jimmy John, right? So I mean, people come and they say, well, we don't know how to do it. Did you talk to the person? So I tell a story that's similar. I was in a setting just like this, was giving a grand rounds at Yale, the place where I did my orthopedic surgery residency, and I challenged them once again and said, you know what, if I were to have applied for residency right now, as I am, do you think that you would have admitted me? And they say, well, Dr. Okunlami, you know, orthopedics is a very physically demanding specialty, and we would need to make sure that you were able to then achieve the difficult physical tasks of the job. And I said, would you have said that same thing to a, you know, 5 foot, you know, 98-pound Asian woman? No, you wouldn't have said that, but you probably would have biased her, right? You would have treated her with bias. You may not have ranked her to match because you don't think that she can do the job. And so you do intentionally discriminate against people that you don't think have the ability to do something without actually giving them the chance to show. And so yes, for that woman that is a small woman, you would not have admitted her to your residency program. And then for me, the disabled man, you would have then asked me if I could complete these tasks, which the job of residency training is to train us to be physicians. We are not orthopedic surgeons when we enter residency. You train us to be orthopedic surgeons. And so if this is going to then mean that you just don't have the capacity, capability to then train people that have differences, that's what you're saying to me. If you actually wanted to have a diverse group of residents to go out to take care of the increasingly diverse population of people that they're going to serve, you would then be delighted to have people of different ages, races, sizes, ethnicities, abilities to then be able to serve your population. But you clearly don't want that, so then don't worry. And in the audience, there was one of my former faculty that said, you know, this reminds me of a story. He said, my son is colorblind. And there was a time where it was kindergarten and his homework said color the circle blue, and his dad was like, I have no idea how he's doing this homework because it says color the circle blue and he's colorblind. And so he said, finally one day I went to him and I said, you know, John, how are you getting your homework done? It says color the circle blue, but I know you're colorblind. And his son looked at him with this perplexed look and said, Dad, I never use crayons that aren't labeled. Such a simple solution that we may have thought was exceedingly difficult to say, how could he possibly do this? But the answer was simple, and he asked him. And it wasn't even something that the kid came up with. The kid was like, hey, guess what? There are already things that exist. Did you know that they put wrappers on these crayons and it says what the color was? Imagine that. And so some of the solutions to the inaccessibility of our world already exist. But if you haven't looked at it through that lens, you might not know where you can then easily implement something that's not going to break the bank, that's not going to be taking resources away from other people, that is going to be universally accessible for many people. But until you start to have that conversation, until you start to engage with people in different communities, until you start to have the conversations on both sides of the fence, until you start to then acknowledge that people have different needs and wants, until you recognize that we want to get to the same conclusion, you're not going to find the wrapper on the crayon. You're not going to build the ramp out of that wood. You're not going to fill the hole that certain populations are in. But if that's what you want to do, you can start to do it. You can start to have those conversations. You can start to acknowledge your own biases. You can start to recognize that you don't have the same perspective of others, and that all of us can then work together to then share these unique perspectives, these different perspectives, to then make sure that the communities in which we are as accessible and as inclusive as they can be. And that's what the goal of these conversations is. It's not to ostracize, it's not to intimidate, it's not to then other, it's to say that my goal is for each of us to then work together, no matter where we are, to then address some of these things, identify some of these barriers, and provide the reasonable accommodations that everybody needs. Because when we talk about universal design, the analogy that I use is that everybody can use the ramp when not everyone can use the stairs. Whether it's me as a wheelchair user, whether it's a parent pushing a stroller, whether it's the delivery person with a dolly, that ramp is something that everybody can use. And it shouldn't be something that's the back door freight entrance where the garbage comes in is the way that we have the accessible entrance. Because that, and this, once again, this is not the criticism, but this is just fresh on my mind because I got a tour of a facility at Michigan yesterday. That's one of our new buildings, and it's an auditorium. And the way that the auditorium is created is that there are no stairs. So it's a subtle grade across the entire auditorium. It's actually the largest auditorium that we're going to have on Michigan's campus. But so what it is it makes it actually very wide, and it's not as deep. And so what it does is that it makes the students sitting in the very back of the auditorium much closer to the instructor, which that's already sort of a positive thing. An individual that's a wheelchair user can then sit in multiple parts of the auditorium and not just in the back row when you come in from the top. The instructor or anybody else that is a wheelchair user doesn't have to enter through the back exit somewhere. They can come in from any part of the auditorium and still make it either to the stage or to a seat. And these are the things that then were put into place that could be the standard, right? And so we don't think about some of those little things, but I talk about what about the experience of that student with a disability who then doesn't get to meet most of their classmates, doesn't get to have the face time with the instructor, simple things like walking up to the instructor at the end of class to ask a question. That then if you're already in the back and you have to then go out the back door, around the building, in another entrance, up through the back to then get to the instructor that can't see you in the back when you're waving anyway, how do you then get the same opportunities that your classmates have when your classmate can just walk right up at the end of class and ask a question? So these are seemingly insignificant things, but these are things that impact students every single day that sometimes they share, sometimes they don't. Some students don't even know that they can ask these questions. They don't even know that these are things that they're missing because for their entire lives, they never even thought that that was going to be the thing that they could do. But once again, that privileged position of just thinking, I'm just going to walk up to the instructor at the end of class and ask a question, isn't the fault of the student that can just walk up to the end of the class and ask the instructor. But we don't often realize the experiences that are so very different from people. Like the notion of me challenging a police officer when they pull me over and I didn't do anything wrong is, what are you talking about? That is what I was taught. No matter what I did, you pulled me over, my hand's on the dashboard, I'm not moving until you tell me to move. I know you're going to ask me for my driver's license, but I'm not going to reach into my pocket and grab it until you ask me to. I know you're going to ask for my registration, and I'm not going to reach across and open up the glove compartment until you tell me to. But someone that hasn't been trained in that is not going to understand why that's my perspective and why that's a serious perspective that I have. But I don't blame you for just being like, oh, hey, officer, what's going on? I'm just going to grab one of the things. because you just haven't had to experience that in that same way. So I don't criticize you for it, but we recognize that people's experiences are different. And if our goal is to get to the point where we don't have those negative experiences, then we can work on it together. So timing-wise, I'm already over. Didn't give you guys a chance to ask more questions. Hopefully this conversation will continue. I will say though, if there are any questions that anybody burning things that people have, I don't see them kicking us out yet. So I will stop and I will then open the floor to say, if anyone wants to say something or ask something, feel free. Otherwise, I'm gonna defer to Jessica. So thank you all on Zoom as well. Thank you all for participating, which really was just letting me talk. Told you guys, you would have had to sneak something in there, but I just kept on going.
Okay, I've got something to ask.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I've noticed around campus, for the little bit I'm here, because usually I'm virtual, there are quite a bit, especially like in here, there are quite a bit of stairs in different places, and there are even some of the older people that come in, and we're getting more adult students, older adult students into the college in the first place. A lot of them have issues with knees, hips, ankles, all of these different things. All of these different things they're an impediment for them to walk around, be able to get through the stairs. Yes, you have a area in the back where wheelchair users can sit, but then you've got people who are needing mobility aids that don't have a wheelchair. So how are they supposed to go through and navigate these different things without a ramp?
Yes, I mean, and that's the design of that auditorium that I mentioned. It addresses all of that, because when you have no stairs and there were multiple spaces throughout that were sort of blocked off, either for a wheelchair user or for someone to put their walker mobility device, you can then sit in multiple spots. If you then look up some of those videos I talked about with Alabama, they have a video where they're announcing sort of their grand opening of their adaptive athletics building, and they talked about the gym and the bleachers and how there are cutouts in multiple sections so that someone that's a wheelchair user can watch the game with their entire family and not just sit in the one designated handicap section that we make for it. So those are some of the things that can be done. And I tell people that, once again, modifying existing structures is something that is difficult, and it's not that I don't want people to do it, but when I have those practical conversations, I say, look, there are things that you can do with all the new builds that you do, right? So at least as you're planning for the future, don't build a facility that's already inaccessible. And then that there are ways that you can try to adjust the existing things, or at least acknowledge the fact that they are not accessible, and then be more proactive in asking if anybody has any accommodation needs. And if so, you can change classrooms such that a class is held in a different building, in a different location, such that that person who has an accommodation need is then accommodated. And so that's the sort of stuff that can demonstrate that the institution cares, is that saying, all right, well, we've identified this as a barrier, and this is how we're going to address it. We can't change the building today, and I know that, right? We're not gonna be able to change this building today, but what we can do is look at the other facilities we have on campus, and we can move this classroom. Like, we can, and that's some of the things that we end up doing, is changing the location of classes to then make it such that individuals in that class then have the accessibility that they need. So those are some of the steps to get there, but also then making sure that the institution recognizes that it might take a financial investment to make sure that you either renovate some buildings, and then the buildings that I know almost every single college campus are planning. Like, there are things that are planned. Whether you have gotten the finances to then build it or not at that point, everybody has a dream of the next student affairs building they want, or the next gym, or the next rec center, right? And look at those plans now. Look at those plans now, have somebody take a look at the accessibility of those plans, start to then talk to partner institutions and say, how did you build yours? Because that's what happened with Michigan. They were looking at something that I think UC San Diego was building, and they like, oh, we really like this design. And that's how they came up with that auditorium. So it wasn't even that they were the leaders and the best and coming up with it on their own. They saw somebody else that did it and said, we want to do that same way. So those are the types of longer term things that we can do with institutional leadership to then make sure that down the road we're not having this same conversation. So thank you for your question. I see you taking the mask down.
No, I was just thinking that'll be a big thing for recruitment. You offer those things that those handicapped schools around the country, that's what I want to know. Someone have access.
Exactly. And so the business, so he talked about how that could be a recruitment thing, is what he said, that people around the country will say, oh, look at what they do at that institution, I want to go there. So that's the business case that I also tell people. People think that people with disabilities are a demographic that are not beneficial to you financially. That's an entire blue ocean of resources that are untapped. Because guess what? Like me and a bunch of my other counterparts too, if we start spreading the word about a bunch of people that are, oh, you should fly this airline because they're great, or you should go to this restaurant because their access is amazing, you're gonna have more people patronizing your establishment, right? And while the numbers that we say 20% of the population has a disability at any given point, that grossly underestimates the number of people that actually have disabilities. And there are lots of things that people do not disclose as disability because of the stigma of disability that still fall under protection by the ADA. And so there's a large population of people that's sort of the total accessible market for anybody that's business people. Like you are not tapping that total accessible market, right? Like there's so many people that you are not appealing to that would buy your products. So the disability community is a very sort of fiscally strong community that you could then benefit from financially if that's the angle that you need to go. So I mean, I've had these whole talks with finance people too, where they don't even care about the touchy-feely diversity, equity, and inclusion part. We talk about how you can then make money from this community by then being more accessible and inclusive. So that's the part of like finding out what the person on the other side of the fence needs and wants, and then appealing to that part of them. Because unfortunately for some people, it's not gonna be because they're gonna be like, oh, kumbaya, I want everyone to feel good. It's gonna be about how can I make more money? And I'll tell you, you can make more money by then making sure that you can address this population who currently isn't coming to your establishment. But they will come to your establishment if you do this, this, and that. I guarantee it. You don't think that they wanna then watch movies too? And then any of you that are my age or older, movie theaters didn't always have seats that were accessible in them. Movie theaters now will have accessible seats in them. Movie theaters didn't always have, captions. Didn't always have, a way that you can have the video and audio description that you can then participate. So that is because people started to recognize that we're excluding people, not because they just really wanted to, but because that's getting more people to then buy tickets to your movies. Follow the money. All right. Well, I do have a meeting anyway. And so if we're all good, I really, really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to them keeping it. We're right down the road from each other and would love to return the favor at some point. If anybody here wants to come down and ask some questions, check out Michigan, see what we're doing. Would love to introduce you to Dr. Martino Harmon. So please, open book, my Twitter information was there. People can have my email. Really, thank you all so much. Thank you guys on Zoom for participating.
Just one question, wheelchair basketball remotely, would you ever play here?
Would I ever play here? Of course we play here. I mean, like if you guys, if we want to do a tournament here and get this community involved and then have something with SC4 in Michigan, would love to then participate. Because you probably have more people in this community that would do it or that are already doing it than would love to then have something together.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. O, and thank everyone for coming, everyone that is viewing virtually in person. If you want to view this live stream later, it will be available sc4.edu/DEI. Thanks for coming.
And thank you to our ASL interpreters.
Yes, thank you so much.